Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our next matchup for UFC 324. In this matchup, we have Alex Perez taking on Charles Johnson. Great fight in the flyweight division, and kind of a clash of timelines, if you will. Both as what is it? You have Perez and Johnson, both guys on the little later stages of flyweight division. You have Perez at 33, going to be 34 in about 2 months. You got Charles Johnson, who just turned 35, and 35 or over kind of thing for flyweight. That's real in this division for sure, where speed, athleticism, and reaction time is crucial. But you have also just a clear difference of I don't want to say this, just how they performed as of recent. With Perez, he's 1-4 in his last fight. Now, granted, he's not losing scrubs. He lost to Pantoja, lost to Muhammad Mokaev, knocked out Mateus Nicolau, but he's no longer in the UFC. Then lost to Tetsuro Taira and Asual Mabayev. So his last 4 fights, you think of it, undefeated contender in Muhammad Mokaev, undefeated contender in Tetsuro Taira. And then he loses to Asual Mabayev, who is pretty good. He's a good top 7 flyweight contender, Almabayev. And then also, Pantoja, who's the second greatest flyweight in this division. Meanwhile, in the reverse, Charles Johnson is 4-1 in this division. His only loss to Remazov Temirov is sort of disputed for me because Temirov, later was caught using PEDs for his scheduled bout for Asual Mabayev. So, Charles Johnson won the 3rd round of that fight. But then you look at the 4 wins, and Jake Hadley, Joshua Van. Charles Johnson is the last guy to beat Joshua Van, the current flyweight champion. That's kind of crazy. He's a great prospect killer because, you also look at his other great, his most recent win, which was a knockout of Loner Kavanaugh, who is a very good prospect and someone who I think is still going to do great things in Kavanaugh, and also a win against Sumadarchi. So really just a clash of one is streaking, more or less, you could say. The other has fallen on hard times. So I guess this is more so for Charles Johnson. Can he get over the proverbial hump and make it to contendership? Because there's a good chance if you can beat Alex Perez, he might be just 1 or 2 fights away from getting a title shot. Like I said, man, he was the last person to beat Joshua Van. That means something. That means something. Now, looking at their styles. Alex Perez is, I think, at his best when he fights aggressively and mixes things together. Perez is very compact, very powerful flyweight with good boxing, very powerful hands. Like I said, knocked out Mateus Canelo pretty good. He actually also has some mean leg kicks too, like when he TKO'd Jussier Formiga via via leg kicks. Has a pretty good solid wrestling game and has a wrestling background. And Perez likes to step into the range, throw combinations, and then change levels when opponents start reacting to his hands. And I think when Perez is healthy and confident, I say that because one of the biggest things that was going on with Perez's career is he would get injured consistently, which is why you would see in some of his fights, there's a huge gap in between one fight. For example, Pantoja fight was about 3.5 years ago. Meanwhile, and then Muhammad Mokaev fight almost 2 years ago. Technically a year and 10 months, but still, that's a long gap between those 2 fights, and those were the latest fights of his career. He is doing a bit better in coming back to the octagon, like the Asual Mabayev fight was November. He's going back in January, so that's a pretty good turnabout for sure. I say this, when it comes to his wrestling, Perez, his wrestling and top control can also be effective, particularly when he's able to surprise opponents with level changes. The one concern for Perez has been sustainability, like I said, injuries, layoffs, and then he comes back, he fights some killers. Flyweight is stacked too, so don't get it twisted. He's like I said, he's not fighting scrubs. It just has limited, though these layoffs have just limited Perez's consistency. And his output can drop as the fight goes on. I'd say the other big weakness is he's very susceptible to getting submitted. It's not so much he has bad jiu-jitsu, and besides who he's fighting is really good. It's just sometimes he just leaves his neck out for too long. Both Figueiredo and Almabayev got him via guillotines. And that's because I think Perez was too aggressive in his wrestling and or just not fully aware enough. And he would just leave his neck open. Now, I don't think that's going to play a big factor in this, as Charles Johnson isn't a submission guy. He's more of a knockout guy and a decision winner. So, but just something to keep in mind for sure. Now, looking at Charles Johnson, he is more of a volume-based, cardio-driven fighter whose game is built for the long fight. He is much better in the third round than he is in the first round. He definitely takes some time to warm up and eventually get going. Just like Piotr Jan, like Joshua Van, like slow starters, but then as the fight goes on, their engines really start revving up, and then they really start putting it on their opponents. Johnson has good consistent movement, a high output, and length, and very tall for this division at 5'9" with a 70-inch reach each. And he is good at winning by not relying on big moments, but by stacking the minutes. Johnson is not by any means a flashy striker. He is he's efficient. He throws straight punches, mixing kicks, and keeps opponents working defensively. And Johnson's ability to maintain that pace over 3 rounds is one of his biggest advantages. I definitely say if he were scheduled for 5, he'd do much better. I also think his cardio has something to do with the fact that he used to be a track star, or I think he was going to compete in the Olympics, or did in track. That's what I know for sure. And also, Johnson is just fucking durable. I don't think he's ever been finished in the UFC. And you look at some of the losses he had suffered in that time, only like, say, Mohamed Mokaev and... oh my God, his name is eluding me. Rafael Esteban. Just unfortunately got out-grappled a lot in his fights. But even then, he's shown to improve his takedown defense greatly as his career went on. And again, he's just so good at letting opponents just wear down their own gas tank. Like Loner Kavanaugh won the first round and was beating Johnson's ass, for lack of a better term. But then second round rolls up, Loner Kavanaugh gets tired, Johnson capitalizes as Kavanaugh pushes back, hands down, and just Johnson catches him with the right hook. That's the thing about Charles Johnson. That's what makes him such a good prospect killer. He has great cardio and good at making opponents pay for careless mistakes when they're tired. I don't know how well that would work against a veteran like Perez, but that is something to keep in mind. Now, I think this fight hinges on whether Perez can make his early offense count. Perez is likely to come out strong, pressure Johnson, and mix in his takedowns to disrupt his Johnson's rhythm. I think if Perez can bank early rounds or score meaningful damage, he puts himself in a good position. Because you know this thing in Johnson's career, he's almost always lost the first round. And in a 3-round fight, that's not good news, and you basically have to win back both the second and third. That's the biggest things as Johnson has struggled with. He seemingly always loses the first round, and he's essentially having to play catch-up. Now, that being said, he always seems to win the third round. It's just, if he starts faster, I think he would win a lot more of his fights. But, hey, it seems to be working out for him. Like I said, he's 4-1 in his last 5. I do think the longer this fight goes, the more it does favor Charles Johnson, because Johnson's movement and output are designed to stretch opponents thin, basically. As Perez slows, Johnson's volume begins to take over, and I think Johnson's length and straight punches are going to frustrate Perez and force him to reset and work harder to close distance. Another key factor is durability. As I said, Charles Johnson has a really good chin. He's yet to be finished via strikes in the UFC. I don't think he's ever been finished in the UFC either. And if Perez can't hurt Johnson early, he does, I think, risk falling behind as Johnson's activity starts to pile up. And I think over 15 minutes, I think just Johnson's style naturally creates separation. He doesn't need to dominate moments. He just needs to consistently outwork his opponents. So for my official prediction, I'm going to go with Charles Johnson. I think Perez is dangerous, especially early, especially with those leg kicks of his. And his wrestling could play a factor, especially in the first round. But I think Johnson's cardio, volume, and durability make him a tough matchup. And I think Johnson's ability to maintain pace and keep fights moving favors him in a fight that is likely to stretch into rounds 2 and 3. I can't see Perez finishing this in the first round. I just can't. And I think as long as Johnson survives the early pressure and avoid getting stuck underneath Perez for extended periods, he should be able to take over this fight as it continues to progress. So my official prediction, I'm going to pick Charles Johnson. I'm going to pick him via decision. It's not that Perez is like tough to get out of there. Like I said, he's been finished in a few of his fights recently, but I don't think Charles Johnson is that good of a submission guy. And I don't know, and he could knock out Alex Perez, but that is a tough assignment because Perez has yet to be knocked out in the UFC. Besides that TKO where he blew his knee out to retire it, but that's about it. So once again, I'm going to pick Charles Johnson. I'm going to pick him via decision in this. But that being said, that's been my breakdown of this fight. If you liked the video, like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below on who you think is going to win. But until then, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. And remember, stay calm, stay respectful, and enjoy the violence. I'll see y'all next time.